Wartburg, and she's studying engineering. She got that gene from her mother as far as being a good student. And our son is an 18-year-old senior with three high school football games to play. And this Friday is senior night, so I'm not doing as well as he is leading up to the last home game here that I'm going to coach him. But one good thing that I'm very happy about, I'm glad that Aaron, my nephew, is Drew's godfather, and they have never evidently spoke about their curfew growing up, because Drew's is an hour earlier than what Aaron had. Aaron had a midnight curfew, and Drew has an 11 o'clock curfew back home. But I am the youngest of 5 siblings. Ed was the oldest, and I'm the youngest, and there were three sisters in between. I wanted to start out about a little story. This is a story that you would not know about my brother. About 8 or 9 years ago, we have a genetic, I don't know, it's just a genetic flaw, evidently. Thomas Min, and it bleeds into a couple of my sisters too, we aren't very good drivers. In fact, we're probably considered horrible drivers. I don't think that none of us think we're bad. I don't think that I'm very bad. Ed never thought that he was a bad driver. I know Aaron doesn't think that he's a bad driver. About 8 or 9 years ago, my coaching staff, we were headed down to Iowa City to the football coaches clinic. And we're on I-380. 2 of my faults in driving, so my family and my assistants say. They say that I travel too closely behind the car in front of me, tailgating, and they say that I drive way too fast and not attentive to the road and that kind of thing. So we're cruising down 380 headed to Iowa City, and I'm talking to my assistant, and he's kind of braced like, holy cow. And one of my assistants in the back say, hey, Coach, if you speed up just a little bit more, I think Coach Madsen can reach up in the vehicle in front of him and grab some of those guys' potato chips, and we could all have some potato chips back here. And I don't know, I'm probably doing about 78 miles an hour or maybe 81. And all of a sudden, there's a red streak that comes flying by us on the left-hand side. And we look over, and it's my brother Ed driving the AP van. And Coach Wigman, longtime assistant here, is going like, waving to us like, this might be the last time we see you. Now, the really funny part about that story is, a lot of you guys don't know, my brother Ed taught driver's ed here for years and years and years. And we always talk, even Aaron talked about how bad a driver he was. And 2 or 3 years ago, we were back home at my mom's for a holiday, and I had the misfortune to get to ride to Oskaloosa with Aaron. Aaron, I think in the 18 miles to Oskaloosa, we went off the road like 7 times. Aaron's the worst of all of us, but he'll say he is not. Listening to Aaron speak, I'm afraid maybe we had the same speechwriter. So some of the things that I'm going to talk about are a lot of the things that Aaron talked about, maybe just from a slightly different perspective. But I really firmly believe, as Aaron does, that everything happens for a reason. I don't think things just randomly happen. Now, I don't know if you can see from here. I'm not 100% sure what the reason is for this large cold sore on my lower lip, but everything happens for a reason. I think that there's a reason that you're here today, like Aaron talked about. Maybe there was an adult in your school that thought you could get something out of this. Maybe you volunteered to come here today. Maybe your best friend begged you so they wouldn't have to come alone. Maybe you just want to get out of a day of school, and I get that. Being the assistant principal, I get that. I just want you to know that we're all here. You and I are both here for a reason, and it's your responsibility to get something out of today. Maybe you've already got something. Maybe you're going to get something later on. But don't waste this opportunity. The reason I'm here today, one of the main reasons is I don't think I probably would have got asked to speak here if I wasn't Ed's little brother. That's one of the first reasons. And the other reason that I'm really here today, because this isn't necessarily in my comfort zone, speaking in front of 500 people. When I first got into coaching I got my first head coaching job at Galva Holstein in 1993. And we weren't very good for a couple seasons, and then we had a really good year, and we went 9-2 and made the quarterfinals. And in coaching, if you have success, sometimes you get asked to speak at coaching clinics. And I got asked to speak at the Jefferson Football Clinic, and I was really nervous about it. One of the things I really miss about not having my brother around is just be able to call and have a conversation with him. And when we watch that video clip, just to hear his voice it's just refreshing for me. We still have one of the last phone messages on our phone. We still have a phone at home, and we still have that last voice message that he left. But I called Ed and I said, Ed, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. What can I possibly speak after coaching 3 years? What can I possibly tell a bunch of coaches that have been coaching 25 years? He said, it doesn't matter what you talk about. And the reason I'm here is because he always encouraged me, anytime you get an invitation to speak in public, take it. Because someone thinks you have something to share, whatever the content might be. Someone thinks that you have something important to share with the people, or they wouldn't ask you. And probably more important, he said, number two, when you speak in public, it forces you to really think about what you believe in. And as I sit down and write notes for today, that message just kept coming back. Make sure that you really think about what you believe in when you get in places of leadership or in front of people like this. The second story I want to tell you a little bit about my brother. Coach Heitland from Dallas Center Grimes is here today, and Coach Heitland used to coach up here at Appleton and Parkersburg years ago. Most of you at least know what happened on June 24th, 2009. The day that Ed was murdered. Most of you don't know, Coach Heitland does, Coach Kearns does, Coach Wigman does, Coach Thomas, the younger Coach Thomas does, Todd Thomas. On the 23rd, the day before my brother died, we were scheduled to go down to Dallas Center Grimes and do an offensive line camp. Ed and some of his assistants went around the state to places that he knew, people that he knew, and put on offensive line camps in the summertime. And a lot of times he'd ask me to come along with him. And I came this close to calling Ed and saying, hey, I can't come. I got way too much stuff to do at school. I'm not going to be able to make it. But I didn't do that. All the way down there, if Scott will remember this, all the way down there, the weather was horrible. There was a thunderstorm going through. I drove in lightning and rain the whole way. I had just assumed at any minute I was going to get a phone call from Coach Heitland saying, hey, the weather's too bad, we're not going to be able to have this. But none of that happened. I had an opportunity to spend about 6.5 hours on the very last day of my brother's life on this earth with him. And that's a blessing that I can't even put into words. But like I said, everything happens for a reason. And one of those moments, we were taking a break. And those of you that didn't have an opportunity, a lot of the young people didn't have an opportunity to know my brother. He was high-strung, I guess is a good word to use. He was very high energy, highly motivated, and it was one of the worst June days weather-wise. It was hot, humid. I was dying. I wanted to be anywhere but there at the moment. And we're taking a break, and I'm sitting down, and Ed's standing, and he said, Greg, you're the only one that will tell me when I don't have it anymore, when I can't reach young people, you got to tell me it's time to get out. And I'm like, can I have another glass of water? You know, he's high energy and ready to go and mad we have a break, and I'm dying. And then in the very next breath, he says, I think if I could go 15 more years, at that time he only had 3 grandsons, I think. If I could go 15 more years, and he was 59 at the time, I think I could coach all 3 of my grandsons. But that special time, I think about that time a lot, and I feel a little bit guilty because my sisters didn't necessarily have that time. But before we left that day, and Ed was a very loving person, and everybody knew how he felt about them. But he and I don't think maybe with our sisters, we didn't verbalize that a lot, and we certainly didn't hug and kiss and that kind of thing all that much. But Before we left that day, Ed comes up and hands me my check for being there, and he gives me kind of a half hug and said, "I love you." And, you know, those are moments that I know everything happens for a reason. We're sitting in this auditorium today, as Aaron pointed out earlier, probably because of the two darkest days in Parkersburg and Appling and Parkersburg history. May 25th, 2008, when the tornado hit. Without that tornado happening, we're not sitting in this beautiful high school in this auditorium. They didn't have an auditorium before that tornado. Without June 24th, 2009, there's no way we're here. When this foundation started, we talked about having a coaches clinic for coaches who are coaching the young people. And we've kind of evolved to where my brother's true passion was, and was till the day he died, was you people. His true passion was trying to touch young people's lives. So we kind of turned our focus a little bit more toward the young people and the leaders in the high school, which are you people. But without those two darkest days in Appling and Parkersburg history, we're not sitting here today. It's a response that the community, the school district, my brother was one of the leaders in that after the tornado. Aaron talked about picking yourselves up and dusting yourself off and moving forward and making things better out of a horribly tragic situation. And then Aaron and Todd and Jan, my sister-in-law, along with our family, getting up in front of people on the darkest day of our lives and making a positive out of a horrible situation. Another thing I thought about with in getting ready for today, talking about things happen for a reason. Anybody know how many NFL football players have come out of Parkersburg and Appling Parkersburg High School? 4, right? How does that happen? Parkersburg is a community of about 2,000 people. Appleton's probably a little over 1,000. I think everything happens for a reason. One of our big fundraisers that Aaron talked about is our celebrity golf tournament. Those 4 NFL players know a lot of people that we don't know. They've been able to help get people to come back, celebrities to come back and play in our celebrity golf tournament to help raise money to make this possible. Like I said, those are just examples of how I think everything happens for a reason. And you can turn tragic events into something very positive just by your mental outlook and how you approach things, how you respond. Aaron talked a lot about how you respond. Each one of us are given a certain amount of God-given ability. And Amanda talked about maybe not everybody will get treated fairly based on your gender. Different things are going to affect that. But we're all given a certain amount of God-given ability. And they're given for us, I really believe, to share with other people. You can have a positive impact, even if you don't think you can. You can have a positive impact, and it doesn't have to be a stage in an auditorium. It doesn't have to be as an assistant principal in a high school, as a head football coach, or the head basketball coach at UNI. Each one of us, each one of you have an opportunity to have a positive impact right where you live, right where you sit at lunch, right where you sit in algebra class, where you're at on Saturday night with your group of friends. Each one of us have an opportunity. You don't have to, like I said, you don't have to be it doesn't have to be a huge stage. You don't have to have a family member murdered to have an impact on other people. The biggest thing I would say is go to as many things like this as you can. Listen to those people that you respect, but be ready. Be ready when that opportunity happens. Aaron said, you know, he had no idea the morning that Ed died that he was going to be standing in front of CNN and nationwide news doing a press conference. Use your experiences. Your experiences are teaching you more than you really know. And lean on those experiences as you have opportunities. As opportunity knocks, step through the door and take on that responsibility. Ed had no idea that on May 25th of 2008, when he woke up, that a third of the community of Parkersburg was going to be destroyed, and that his home away from home, and Jan might refute that, this might have been his home, and that might have been his home away from home a block away, but was going to be completely destroyed. But he, along with a lot of people in this community, led because of the opportunity they had. They stepped forward and were leaders that the community needed. You know, Aaron spoke a little bit about Ed's upbringing, and I had the same father and mother that Ed had. We had two completely different lives growing up. You don't have to have a big name. You don't have to come from you don't have to be a Kennedy or a Clinton or whatever it might be to have an opportunity. And you never know what the opportunities are going to be. But growing up in Wattier, Iowa, there weren't a whole lot of things to do. Ed and I both grew up and graduated from Tri-County High School, a little small school. They play 8-man football now. It's a lot smaller than when I was there. A population of about 750 people. Mom and Dad, I bet if you went through their bank accounts, they never had more than $50,000 would be a complete stretch if they ever had $50,000 at any one time. Mom taught school for 2 years, and she was a housewife for the rest of her life, and she's 87, still being a mom. Dad worked several blue-collar jobs. And out of that, Ed came out of a very modest upbringing. My point is, it doesn't matter where you're at, what your family structure is. You have an opportunity. You can make changes. We spoke a little bit about cell phones, so I'm going to skip over that part. I want you to think about what your school culture is like right now. Is your school culture, is it a positive, encouraging place to be, especially for new people? Are you highly competitive in athletics, academics, fine arts? Is it somewhere where you take a lot of pride in being from? I wore my blue pullover. I know Dike New Hartford and AP have a little bit of a rivalry. I wore my blue pullover in the day, even though it's blue. I know blue is kind of a bad color around here, around Appling, Parkersburg, but take pride in where you're from. Do you have a lot of school pride? Or is your high school lacking in some school pride? Is there a hostile environment? Social media craze is, as an assistant principal, I see some of the worst things that's ever been said about other people when I get these, she said this about me, or he said this about me. I just wonder how many of you would be willing to turn your phone on, open up your text message or however you communicate, and would be willing to hand it up 3 rows and let someone else that you don't even know thumb through what you have written there or what you have received. It's a dangerous tool. I think it's the most dangerous thing we have for our society right now is our social media. Is your high school, this is one that's really concerning to me. Is there just, not even is it really bad or is there just a sense of apathy? I just check in at 8:20, go to class, the bell rings at 3:20, I go home. Not a sense of, am I here to get the best possible education I can get? And it goes from the teachers too. Am I doing all I can in my classroom to make that student want to be in my classroom? You guys have more control over the quality of culture at your school than anybody else. As an assistant principal, we can put rules in place. You guys have us far outnumbered, you students. I mean, at my high school, we have about 25 staff members and we have 475 students. We're way outnumbered. The only real change to culture and community that can come about is from the young people, from the people that walk through the halls. And when we talk about young people and leadership, I don't think it's rocket science. Some of the things that Aaron talked about, some of the best leaders that I come in contact on a daily basis with in our high school are young people who do what's right. Do what's right at all times. Aaron talked about when nobody's around, nobody's looking. Be kind to other people. It takes about 3 seconds to say hello and smile to someone. And that could change that person's day. You have the power to impact people far beyond what you know and what you think. Treat others with respect. That was mentioned in the last segment. Work hard at everything that you do and be a positive force in your school. Start out by being a positive force in the 5 or 6 people that you hang out with on the most consistent basis. And then start out being that same positive force at the lunch table that you sit at each day. And then in the algebra class. You have total control over that. And honestly, young people, we need you. We need you to be that positive force in our schools. One thing I would, if you want to try this, I don't know, we've never tried it at home. If you want to be a leader in your school, tomorrow, leave your cell phone on your dresser at home and just go to school without it. And spend every minute that you would be on your cell phone during the school day interacting with somebody else. Better yet, interact with someone that you've never interacted with. You know, that guy who wears the same t-shirt 3 days a week? Or that gal that never sits with anybody except a couple of teachers and lunch? Interact with those people. Get to know them. You don't have any idea what their story is if you never get to know them. It might be the light that they need. My time is getting pretty close here. Bobby Knight, you can think what you want about Bobby Knight. I like a lot of things about Bobby Knight. Don't necessarily agree with all of his tactics and that kind of thing. Some of you are saying, who's Bobby Knight? You guys are getting a lot younger and I'm getting a lot older. Bobby Knight was interviewed one time and they said, are young people different today? And Bobby Knight said, no, young people aren't different. The thing that's different is young people don't have as many or enough quality adults in their lives anymore. You guys are getting close to that adulthood age. When you guys graduate from high school, go on to college, go on to be moms and dads, lawyers, doctors, blue-collar workers, whatever it might be in life, we need you to be those quality adults in the next generation's lives. I'm a little worried about where our society is and where it's headed. You guys are our answer. You guys are our hope. In Dallas Center Grimes, in Manson, Iowa, I'm just rattling off a few schools I saw in Waverly, Iowa. You don't have to change the world. You have to change the world where you are. You have to go about changing the world where you are. And that's how you change the world. That's how we change the world. That's the leadership that we need. And like I said, it's not about standing up and debating a presidential debate. It's about changing our society one family at a time. I'm going to leave you with this, and this is a little bit morbid. It's a little bit hard for young people your age to think about. I heard this on the radio several years ago, and it stayed with me for a long time, and I really think it's true. One of these days, each and every one of us is going to die. And for a lot of us, the only thing that's going to be left is a tombstone. And on that tombstone, there's going to be your name, obviously, and the date that you were born, and the date that you died. And the most significant thing on that tombstone is the tiny little dash in between those two dates. The dash represents your life. It represents what you did with the time you had here on earth. And none of us are promised tomorrow. So we never know when that second date's going to be typed in, or chiseled in that stone. The challenge, you think about how you want to be remembered, what your legacy is going to be. And that's very difficult for a person in their teens. I get that. As I get older, I think about how I'm going to be remembered, if I've done enough in my family, have I done enough in the schools that I've been in, have I done enough in my circle of friends. It's not going to matter when that last date's chiseled on your tombstone. It's not going to matter how much money you had in your bank account. It's not going to matter how many homes you had, how many vacations you got to take to Florida, Hawaii, or wherever it might be. It's not going to matter one iota about how many hours you worked each week. And you have to do all of those things. You have to be a contributing member of society. But the things that our society measures us on as far as success, none of that material stuff is going to matter one bit. Because the only thing that's going to be left over once we're gone is the impact that we've had on the people around us. The things that your family, someday hopefully the good Lord will bless you with a wife or a husband and children. The only thing that's ever going to matter is what kind of person you were. What kind of impact, positive impact or negative impact, you had on those people. Aaron shared a story about my dad growing up. When Ed grew up, he was an alcoholic. When I was about 6 months old, my dad had an accident, broke a vertebrae in his neck, was partially paralyzed for about 9 months. I'm very, very happy to say I didn't grow up with the same dad as Ed did. They were the same people, but my dad never drank a drop after that accident. I didn't know my dad as an alcoholic. And a credit to Ed, Ed never once was resentful of the fact that I had a better dad than he had, that he was at my athletic events when he wasn't at Ed's. Impact, and Ed took that negative and used it as a positive. Fortunately for me, it was a positive, so I could build on that positive thing hopefully with my kids. If you think about your legacy, think about how you want to be remembered, and have the impact that we need each and every one of you to have. Start small. You might someday be on a big stage. It might never be any bigger than the group of people that you hang out with or your family. But think about the legacy. Think about your opportunities. Seize the moment. Be prepared. Be ready to go. Leadership is we can define it, we can talk about it and everything like that. I think it boils down to, like Aaron said, doing what's right, being positive, making choices. Bad things are going to happen to you. I guarantee you bad things are going to happen to you in your life. It's up to us to respond in a positive manner and lead from example, and do something for somebody else. It's called servant mentality, and I know you'll hear a little bit more about that later. But thank you for the opportunity. It's been a tremendous honor for me to be here. Thank you.
All right, so a couple things. We're going to have a break. We're going to do a quick huddle, and we'll have lunch. But as a recap from this morning, I want you to all just think about what are some of the consistent things that you're hearing from each one of these speakers. So you've got your quick huddle questions. But in addition to that, think about some consistencies that you're hearing from each one of these speakers and how those could apply to you. So again, let's do that. Let's do quick huddle. Then you've got a little break. Group A, everybody should know their groups. We'll go to lunch. And Group B will stay in here, come back in here at 11:10 for Coach Kearns.